we're going to be talking about agentic AI and how it's scaling, not just how we're experimenting with it, but how it's scaling in the media strategy. To start with, I'd like to ask you, Emily, so from an agency perspective, how do you differentiate between experiments in AI and AI that scales, that ramps?
Yeah. So I would first think about it in terms of breaking out AI and agentic into a maturity model. So there's three kind of phases there. The first would be functional agents. So that's where people are creating efficiencies in workflow. They're synthesizing certain types of briefs, for example, and pieces like that. Then there's connected agents where you start to see signals starting to inform pieces of the media cycle. And that's where it can get really interesting. But the third and most mature would be within, we call them a horizontal orchestration layer. So that's really where you have that true agentic piece going on. And so when we think about experimentation, within the functional layer, that usually is pretty segmented into a single team or isolated there. And so it really starts to get interesting when you can start to see teams who are leveraging connected agents and starting to move into eventually that horizontal orchestration layer.
And you think you are seeing scaled AI there today?
I would say most organizations are between 1 and 2. So
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but I think that's where the opportunity is and where it's going to be most exciting when you start to see true autonomous synergies across workflows.
Nice. Mike, when you look across the agencies that Basis partners with, where do you see the most opportunity to do agentic AI in media on a grander stage?
We kind of look at it a little differently because agencies are in different life cycles. Obviously, Omnicom is very sophisticated come down this. So when you look at the holding companies, we're seeing their Omni AI platforms happening really well. Independents are a little bit further behind in terms of what they're trying to build in terms of the data that they have. And so what we're doing at Basis is trying to offer them a full agentic solution from a planning and strategy and activation standpoint, because strategy can come from cloud and all that stuff, but there's not enough data layers built on performance or outcomes to generate the results that they're looking for. And everyone's in different kind of buckets right now and where they're at in that journey, and we just kind of want to shore that up for agencies.
Yeah, and so you have this, something you brought to market this year, but what inputs do you need to ingest to help like maybe a more mid-sized agency, one less mature, to scale what it can do in programmatic?
It's unlimited. I mean, everyone talks about data, and so we just ask the question back, like, what kind of data are you looking to ingest? And I think that's kind of where the struggles lie, because, and forgive me, right? I mean, sometimes this is crazy, but there's so much going on right now that it's kind of this Jurassic Park model. What's the quote? Like, they never stop to think if they should, just because they could, right? And so like getting goals, thinking, and language aligned on what the true outcome is going to be is important, or else we can just go so many different directions that it might not be impactful for the agency at all.
I want to come back to when we shouldn't use AI, because I think there are certain situations where we're spinning our wheels or wasting time. So before we get to that, though, I wanted to ask you, Emily, about whether you have protocols you require all of your teams to follow with AI. How rigid and fixed is it? Are they free? Are they doing things you don't know what they're doing, or do you feel like you have a pretty set in stone type set of best practices that you socialize throughout the org?
Yeah, I think what's interesting tension there is that you don't want to inhibit experimentation by putting and implementing too many rules associated with that. That being said, we do have a responsibility when it comes to our clients' needs to ensure that there are strict firewalls. So within Omni AI, we have the ability to essentially foster that space of experimentation with minimal rules, since we already have those regulated in place. So that can really foster the ability for teams to be creative, to really ideate on what's going to not just, again, create that efficiency and essentially create an automated situation, and more about how can they start to create truly workflows that are going to eventually get to a point where we can get to that agentic stage where it's improving what they're doing overall, so it can connect to those systems.
Are there things that you do to try to get them using it more? Because I know there's been a fair amount of research that certain people are like AI early adopters and they're aggressive, heavy users of it, and then others are laggards. Have you done things like included in their annual review, or create any kind of performance benchmarks for individual team members to use it more?
No, not for individual team members. I think that might foster a little bit of a fear mentality, and I think what we're really looking for is to embrace again, the creativity associated with it. I think one of the barriers that you can see a lot when it comes to fear is fear of if their role is going to be made redundant, for example, whenever they're experimenting, if they are creating so many efficiencies. And I think that that's a really interesting space for us, because what we're really focused on is how can we create value and effectiveness. And when you start to see capacity release, what that enables is for us to start to invest time, which is a wonderful asset, right? When we don't have enough of, but into more strategic value. And so that's where I've seen a little bit more of perhaps the friction, but overall, I would not say that we in any way would be implementing that in a performance review.
Yeah. So Mike, you're not a service business, and you are a company that builds products. So how are your teams using it? Or do you have, are you capturing their use in any kind of structured way?
It's very interesting in basis. We are an AI first company, is what we say. And it's kind of twofold. You want your employees leaning in and building what they can build utilizing AI, but then if it's using data that we don't want out there, ensuring that the regulations on whatever software systems or LLMs they're using is important. So that's number one. Number two, we've had employees vibe code some platforms that have helped our business when we do business plans and QBRs and things like that. This, T-Mac, we call him, our head of RevOps, literally built this entire dashboard off of Claude that connects all of our internal tools for business planning purposes, and it's incredible. So what we're doing is taking that and shifting it to our own IT infrastructure, and we will support that technology from here on out. I think the flip side to Gen AI, though, what we talked about is, and we talked about this too, all the slop. So what we say is if you're utilizing AI, it's producing so much content, so when something could happen with a 30-second phone call or one paragraph, now there's a story that people have to read, and that's taking a lot of time. So unless you can sign your name to it and you know every word it produced, don't use AI just to produce a bunch of content.
Yeah, I've experienced this in my work where I'll see briefs that are insanely long and detailed, and they appear really good. But you actually have to read and analyze the whole thing and compare it back to the source material to make sure it's accurate, it's appropriate to the brief, because you'll get a lot of AI-driven recommendations in a brief. And so sometimes I think I'm the first pair of eyes on a brief, and I should not be. But I feel that worries me, that we're over-automating the brief creation process. Other risks that come to mind for you guys when you think about AI?
I did want to actually add on to that when you guys were speaking. One thing that I think that is incredibly important is building the muscle memory for teams to check what they've done on a more deliberate way, and building new QA systems to ensure that whatever they are creating is truly solving not only the issue, but not creating additional ones. I think we also have a real opportunity to identify that AI has created a premium on humans in general. And so what I mean by that is it enables us to truly have that human kind of oversight, and that's something that I think is incredibly impactful for us. So when you start to think about making sure people are checking their work, making sure there are QAs to QA now an agent's work as opposed to a human's work, there's a new process associated with that.
Yeah, it's discernment, right? The world still needs discernment. Maybe we need discernment more than ever, which is, thank God, because I was worrying for my job. But I'm concerned that there aren't, I could not have achieved the level of discernment I think I can brag that I have now in my 50s. I couldn't have done that in my 20s. I had to go through my 20s and my 30s and develop skills and a perspective and industry expertise, and then I had discernment. But it's something you only can get after a long period of time. So my big concern is AI automates the low skill stuff, but that's the stuff you need to cultivate to become a discerning sort of AI overseer, if you will. So I don't know how we cultivate the junior and mid-level talent so that we have people later who can step in and be the adult in the room.
Can I talk to that for a
Yeah.
minute, please?
Yeah.
I love what you said, foster. So we have obviously teams, and our entire sales force, we call it our force. We do that, just AI tips. So they hashtag AI tips, whatever they're doing all the time. And that helps. And so when we foster that culture of sharing, because what we also saw with some of the younger individuals is they'll learn how to use AI in a way, but kind of hoard it to themselves to help them, right? But if we're gonna truly be in this together, we want them to educate everybody else on how to be more productive. And what we found is if we continue to foster that culture to grow and help everybody else, it reduces these barriers and boundaries of being fearful of what AI is gonna build and provide.
Yep.
And that's helped a lot.
Nice. Well, so let's shift gears for a minute and talk about the immense computational requirement of AI. I think we're having our first moment of like, wait a minute, this stuff it's not free. You know, it has a cost, and that cost is financial. There's also a question around sustainability, and which is actually a big voting issue, it would seem. So I'm curious, you know, how should, start with you, Emily, like how should agencies and brands look at the sustainability, both financially, ecologically, operationally, of integrating agentic AI into your tech stack?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a balance, right, in terms of ensuring, obviously, we're fiscally responsible when it comes to the compute costs, but at the same time fostering that culture of experimentation and ensuring that we're not blocking creativity as a result. I think that there's different ways that we have identified that one can, build skills rather than always be building agents. You can learn from those so that you're not necessarily utilizing the same compute cost and token cost associated with, continued building of agents. So that's one thing. I think overall, it's again just a balance, candidly speaking.
Got you. Like when we did the prep call, we had a funny moment where you were talking about the whole carbon reduction trend in ad tech.
Yep. I actually find this conversation kind of fascinating, especially with AI spooling up. It reminds me of the early days of programmatic when it's coming in. And then we got to a point where a lot of the RFPs and RFIs coming through were, what are your sustainability practices, green practices, that kind of stuff. But at the same time, the agencies and brands want as many targeting capabilities as possible, never want to throttle back on inventory and make sure you're reaching the globe with all of these different things. And it's like, you can't have both at one time. And I feel like that's kind of happening right now in AI, where it's kind of on the back burner. We're not seeing RFPs and RFIs based on sustainability anymore because the compute costs for AI are so high. They want to see what those capabilities are. So I feel like that cycle is coming right now. And in the next 5 years, as token costs reduce, we'll start to see people saying, what are you doing from sustainability practice with your AI tools? Just not right now.
Right. Sustainability is only an issue when it doesn't get in the way of the profit motive, unfortunately. But yeah, no, and just the fact that Scope 3 has completely pivoted is another sign, because they were like the leader in this very like nascent world of carbon reducing ad tech, which is, I love it. I love the idea, but I'm not sure that the market ever emerged for it. But
I also don't think he's stopping, though. I mean, BOK is still going to look at sustainability practices, but he's got to build the agentic future first. So
okay.
I will think he's still thinking about it, though.
Okay, I wish he was here. He could answer that one himself. So maybe we could talk about like creatives, even though this is a media discussion. But running media involves testing creatives, and AI lets you create so many more creatives than we could previously. Emily, I'm wondering if you see an opportunity either presently or in the near future to dramatically increase the number of tests and experiments you run with way more ad creatives than we've been using.
I would say yes, in theory. However, I think that you need to remain as focused as possible when it comes to creative testing, so you can ensure what you are doing is truly moving the needle, as opposed to just simply kind of spreading yourself too thin by doing too many experiments. I think AI in general does enable much more than ever before, but I would be wary of going too far one way in terms of just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Mike, you want to pick that up?
Yeah, I do. We're in advertising, right? I mean, brands want outcomes. Agencies want to provide the outcomes for that. And at the end of the day, if I run a furniture store, I want to sell more furniture. So long as whatever we're doing is helping that desired outcome of the advertiser, it's going to be great. But I think there's sometimes things thrown out there all the time. It's like, is this actually helping or is it hurting? It's creating fragmentation, it's hurting operations, that kind of stuff. So it can help the agency become more efficient, provide better services to brands, and brands get the outcomes. I love it. I just want to see more companies, in my opinion, focus on helping.
And massive DCO was one of the first kind of exciting AI machine learning use cases for ad tech, and DCO at a huge scale. But I remember it must be like 15 plus years ago talking to a guy who told me he was at an agency, he was at Sapient at the time, and he said that for 2 separate clients, they were running DCO, and both clients' banner ads optimized to the exact same color, size, design. And basically they ended up with like an average perfect ad, which was the thing that most people would click on. So which speaks to the problem of average results that we have with agentic AI today. I'm curious if you both have thoughts on how to de-average what we get from these systems.
I mean, I think that what is interesting to me about what you just said is that I think the consumer has changed. I don't know how much there is an average consumer in terms of their expectations of what they are seeing from a brand, but also how personalized that they are expecting the creative. There's obviously, again, too far when you start to get creepy, and consumers are definitely much more, say, aware of that. But at the same time, I think that there's an expectation. You see it in LLMs today that people are much more interested in something that's specific to them and meets their needs. And so I would be, well, I think there is a certain normalized space for a creative. I think that consumers have changed the way that they are than 15 years ago and what they expect from brands.
You said something interesting. When it comes down to creative, what we don't talk about is the actual experience of the user, right? We're always talking about the ad that they're shown. There's a company out there called CoFrame that's fascinating because it changes the actual website per visit based on the individual going there. So they can have 100,000 variations of that experience. And that to me is interesting, and I think that provides a lot of application. And that's not creative, right? I mean, maybe it is, and that's blending creative and the landing page experience. But I think that that is what AI and Gen AI is going to enable, is so many different capabilities that we haven't even thought about.
Right, not just what's in the ad, what's on the landing page, the whole path. Yeah, fascinating. Okay, last question, just looking ahead, what use cases for AI and agentic do you expect to prioritize in the next year?
I would say moving along in terms of maturity, so getting to that true horizontal orchestration where we can start to see strategy, activation, measurement, governance all autonomously being fed as opposed to a more linear handoff that you're kind of seeing today.
Exact same. Orchestration is the word for us as well. We want to see everything from planning all the way down to billing and reconciliation. And if we can have agentic solutions helping solidify and streamline that to create autonomous processes, that's what we want. And that's what we're going to do.
Right on. Mike, Emily, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.